Before I start, I need you to understand something. This isn't a story. It's a record, a testimony, a last attempt to make sure anyone, knows the truth about what's buried beneath our feet. I was a correctional officer for a place that doesn't officially exist. A facility built deep underground, hidden from every map, every satellite, every government database. We were told it was a prison, a place to hold what the world wasn't ready to face. But the truth is that we were never guarding the prisoners. We were guarding the world from them, and maybe from what built them. If you're hearing this, it means I didn't make it out, but maybe you will. Just listen carefully. And whatever you do, don't go looking for the vault. I shouldn't be telling you this. Not because I'm afraid you won't believe me. Most people don't. But because if anyone ever finds out I said a word, I'll disappear before sunrise. Not fired, not transferred, gone. You see, I work in a prison that shouldn't exist. A place built, not for people, but for things. When I first took the job, I thought it was some top-secret government facility. High pay, no public record, signed NDAs thicker than a Bible. They told us we'd be preserving global stability. That was the phrase, stability. What they didn't mention was that our prisoners weren't just dangerous. They were wrong. They were mistakes of reality. The prison sits somewhere under the earth. No windows, no sunlight, just endless concrete corridors that hum like they're alive. You can't find it on any map. Hell, you could be standing right on top of it and never know it's there. When I arrived for the first time, they took me down in an elevator that didn't seem to stop descending. 5 minutes, 10, 15. No sense of movement, just that low metallic drone and the pressure building in my ears. When the doors opened, I stepped into silence. Cold, sterile, electric silence. The air smelled like ozone and bleach. The walls were steel gray, lined with motion sensors and cameras that never blinked. Everything was too clean, too symmetrical. It felt like the place had been built by something that understood architecture, but not humanity. Training was short. Follow protocol, never break routine, never improvise. That was it. They handed me a key card and a thin manual with 2 words on the cover: containment first. They never told us why we were there, only what to do. Keep the prisoners alive, report any anomalies, and never ever open a cell unless specifically ordered. At first, I thought it was all overblown bureaucracy. Then, on my first week, I saw something that made me understand what kind of place this really was. We were patrolling the lower levels, sub-level 9, I think, when I heard a sound I can't describe. It wasn't screaming, it wasn't metal. It was like the air itself had been torn apart. My supervisor stopped walking and looked at me with this dead, hollow expression. "Don't react," he said. He raised his hand toward the cell marked 019 phase and whispered, "He's blinking again." Through the reinforced glass, I saw a man, mid-40s, ordinary-looking hair, matted eyes, wide. He was standing in one corner, trembling. Then, in an instant, his body flashed with white light, and he vanished. A split second later, he reappeared on the opposite side of the room, screaming. The scream. God, it wasn't human. It was wet and metallic, like his lungs were shredding themselves apart each time he blinked. The air filled with that light, that sound again and again, until blood began to drip from his nose, his eyes, his ears. I wanted to run. I should have run, but my supervisor just stood there, calm as a statue. He leaned toward the glass and said softly, "Do you see now? This is what happens when you play with space." Later, I learned the man had once been a scientist experimenting with teleportation. Something went wrong, and now he was stuck, flickering between moments, not moving through space, phasing through reality itself. He never truly left the cell, but sometimes the sensors would show movement far beyond the walls before he blinked back, sobbing like a lost child. Every time a new guard starts, they make us watch him. They say it's a test of composure. But I know the truth now. It's a warning. Because here inside this place, there are far worse things than the phaser. Things that don't scream. Things that listen. After my first month, I stopped looking at the security cameras for too long. Sometimes the static forms shapes that move when you don't blink. Sometimes the intercom clicks on by itself, and you hear breathing, not human, not animal. Something else entirely slow and deliberate, as if it's learning the rhythm of yours. The prison is always shifting, always feel longer at night. Doors appear where there weren't any before. And sometimes when you're walking alone, you hear a low hum beneath the floor, steady pulsing like a heartbeat, buried deep in the concrete. I used to think the danger came from the prisoners. Now I'm not so sure. Lately I've noticed the walls. The walls breathe. It's faint, barely visible, but when you stare long enough, you can see them rise and fall, just slightly, as if the entire facility is inhaling. And when the air vents shut off for maintenance, you can hear it. A soft exhale that rolls through the corridors, heavy and slow. My supervisor tells me it's just pressure equalization. But I've started to dream about it. Those long, drawn-out breaths, echoing through the dark, the same rhythm that fills the prison day and night. Sometimes I wake up gasping, realizing I was breathing in sync with it. No one leaves this place. Not really. We rotate shifts, we file reports, we pretend this is normal. But every single guard down here knows the truth. This prison wasn't built by us. It was found. And whatever it is, we are living inside. It's still alive. They told me to never look him in the eyes when he blinked. I didn't understand why. I thought it was just some psychological warning, a safety protocol, like avoiding a strobe light if you're epileptic. But after my third week on duty, I found out the hard way what happens if you don't look away. The man they call the phaser isn't really a man anymore. His name used to be Dr. Leon Hargrave, a physicist, one of those people too smart for their own good. He was working on quantum displacement, instant relocation, bending the rules of where a person can exist at one moment in time. He succeeded. And that's the problem. You see, teleportation isn't just moving through space, it's moving through the space between spaces. He thought he could control it, build a machine that turned the laws of physics into a personal highway. But somewhere in the test, something reached back. Now he flickers. Every few minutes, sometimes every few seconds, he bursts into this blinding light and vanishes, leaving behind a crackle of static in the air and a faint metallic smell like burnt copper and blood. Then, in a blink, he's back again. But he's never quite the same. His eyes are wrong, slightly shifted, like they're not synced with his body. His voice sometimes echoes before he opens his mouth. And when he screams, it doesn't come from his throat. It comes from everywhere. I remember my first solo observation shift. I stood outside his cell clipboard, in hand, pretending to be calm. Inside, he sat cross-legged in the corner, muttering to himself. The cameras always distort when he speaks, the footage looping over itself, the timestamps jumping backward a few seconds at random. Then it happened. A flash of white swallowed the cell. When my vision cleared, he was gone. The monitor in front of me blinked, red anomaly detected. I froze, just like they told us not to. If he's gone for more than a minute, we're supposed to report it and leave the observation wing immediately. But curiosity is a disease down here, and I caught it. I took one step closer to the glass. The air felt heavier, charged like the static before a thunderstorm. Then from the center of the room, the light returned, only this time it didn't fade. It stayed. Shapes moved inside it, twisting, reaching, like dozens of hands pressed against a veil trying to crawl through. I couldn't move. My legs locked. And in that blinding light, I saw him, Dr. Hargrave, his face stretched, screaming soundlessly, his body half dissolved into the glow. And in the corner of his eye was me. I wasn't looking through the glass anymore. I was inside that light, staring back at myself through his vision. I could feel the air from my side of the glass. I could smell the iron of my own blood. Then the light snapped out, and he reappeared, gasping, hunched over, blood pouring from his nose. He looked up at me, and for the first time he spoke directly. "It's not teleportation," he whispered. "It's a doorway." That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what he said. A doorway to where in the following weeks I learned more about him. Stories passed between guards like ghost tales during meal breaks. They said that sometimes when he blinked out, the cameras would pick up brief glimpses of other places, not other rooms, other worlds. One recording showed a landscape of black glass, cracked and shifting, with things moving beneath the surface like shadows in boiling water. Another showed a corridor made of bone. And one showed nothing at all, just an endless void darker than darkness itself. The scientists upstairs called it dimensional bleed. We called it hell. I asked one of the senior officers once, "Why do we keep him alive? Why not end it? Put him out of his misery?" The officer stared at me with tired eyes. "Because every time he blinks," he said, "we get a little closer to understanding what's on the other side. And because if he dies there, we don't know what might come back here." That was the first time I considered that maybe Hargrave wasn't the prisoner. Maybe he was the lock. A few weeks ago, during my shift, he blinked again, but something went wrong. Usually he vanishes and reappears in seconds. But that night, he was gone for 23 minutes. We activated the red alert, sealed the wing, and waited. When the light finally flared back, on the air smelled like rot and salt water. He was kneeling on the floor, shaking violently, clawing at his skin, like he was trying to peel it off. The guards rushed in, but I stayed at the observation post, staring through the glass. He lifted his head, eyes wide and empty, and whispered something that still echoes in my skull. They saw me. Then he smiled. Wide. Too wide. His teeth weren't teeth anymore. They looked like glass, translucent and sharp, and they moved. He blinked again before anyone could react. When he came back, the glass teeth were gone, but his smile remained. No one talks about that incident. The official report says brief psychotic episode. But I know what I saw. He's not just traveling between moments anymore. He's bringing pieces of whatever's out there back with him. The lights in his cell flicker when he sleeps. The metal walls hum like they're vibrating in another frequency. And sometimes, when the hallway goes quiet, I swear I can hear faint whispers, distant and layered, coming from behind the reinforced door. It's like they're calling to him, or maybe calling through him. Last night I was on patrol when the alarms went off again. Another blink. But this time the cell didn't light up. It went completely dark. When I got there, the cameras were dead. The entire section was offline. And on the inside of the glass, scrawled in something that looked like ash, were 5 words. It's not my turn yet. No one saw him return. No one saw him leave. But when the systems came back online, an hour later, he was there again, sitting in the corner, staring at the wall. I stood there frozen, my hand trembling on the keycard. Then slowly, he turned his head toward me. And though his lips never moved, I heard his voice, clear as day. You shouldn't have watched. They say he can't escape his cell, that the walls are reinforced with materials beyond our understanding. But deep down, I think the truth is simpler. He doesn't want to leave. Not yet. Because wherever he goes, when he blinks, he's not the only one who knows how to come back. They told me he wasn't born. He was made. The man in cell 10227 doesn't have a name anymore. He used to. There are records somewhere buried in sealed files. But now, everyone just calls him Prisoner X. I've only been in his wing 3 times. That's enough. The last guard who saw him too often ended up in the infirmary. What was left of him, anyway? You'd think after working with someone like the Phaser, nothing else could scare me. But X is different. He doesn't distort reality. He doesn't flicker in and out of existence. He's just pure danger. He's the closest thing I've ever seen to a god made of flesh. When they first captured him, it took 3 entire squads. They used tranquilizer darts meant for elephants, riot foam sonic weapons, and still he ripped through them like paper. He wasn't superhuman. He was just optimized. Every inch of him engineered to kill, resist, survive. I remember the first time I saw him. He was standing perfectly still in his containment cell, lit by a single flickering bulb. His arms were bound with reinforced metal restraints, thick enough to anchor a ship, and there were faint etchings burned into his skin. Chemical scars, maybe. He looked like a man, but his eyes, they were too steady, too calculating. I'd seen killers before. He wasn't one of them. He wasn't even angry. He was curious. When the guards brought in his nutrient feed, he tilted his head studying them. Not like prey, not like predators, like a scientist watching lab rats. They say X volunteered for the experiments that created him. He wanted to evolve, merge biology with technology, push beyond human limitation. And for a while, he succeeded. His bones were reinforced with some kind of biosteel alloy. His skin thickened into a hardened, flexible armor. He could breathe underwater, survive gunfire, resist acid fire, electricity. But somewhere along the way, he lost everything else. No empathy, no fear, no identity, just purpose. The scientists thought they could control him. They were wrong. I've read the reports. One of the researchers noted that during a neural scan, X's brainwave patterns mimicked the frequency of the computer analyzing him. Not just interference, synchronization. In simple terms, the machine started thinking with him. After that, they shut everything down. But he didn't stop evolving. He barely speaks. But when he does, every word sounds rehearsed, like he's copying a voice he's heard before. Once, when I was assigned to monitor his vitals, I heard him whisper something under his breath. It wasn't directed at me. It was like he was talking to himself. I am the sum of everything they feared. I froze. I didn't log it in my report. No one does. Because if he's learning, if he's aware of what he is, then every minute he's alive is a countdown to something we won't survive. The collar around his neck contains a syringe filled with sedatives strong enough to kill a horse. Every few days, we drill a small hole through his armor-like skin, just to keep the injector secure. It takes 3 men to get close enough to do it. One time, he flexed at the wrong moment. The drill snapped. It sliced through the forearm of the guard beside me, like a blade through butter. X didn't move. He didn't smile. He just looked down at the blood spattering across the floor and said, "Weak material." That guard never came back. I keep wondering why we still keep him here. He doesn't talk. He doesn't give us information. He doesn't break. He just exists. Maybe that's the point. Maybe someone up top wants to see what happens when you keep a god locked in a box. There's one incident that nobody likes to mention. Something that happened a few years before I arrived. Apparently, during a transfer, X resisted sedation. His skin had hardened, deflecting the needles. They say he broke free of his restraints and tore through 2 full security teams. They tried everything gas-fire, cryogenic rounds. Nothing stopped him. Eventually, one of the scientists triggered a failsafe, an electromagnetic pulse meant to disable the tech embedded in his body. It worked. Sort of. For 13 minutes, the entire facility went dark. No power, no lights. And when the systems rebooted, X was back in his cell. No one saw how. The only thing left in the corridor were the bodies of everyone involved. Each one perfectly dismembered, neat, surgical clean. Like he'd dissected them out of boredom. When I was reassigned to monitor him again last week, I noticed something new. He was standing closer to the glass than usual. Still bound, still silent. But behind him, on the steel wall, someone or something had written in blood, "I am awake." We checked the footage. No one entered his cell. And the writing wasn't there the night before. The higher-ups ordered a cleanup, pretending it was contamination. But I saw the look on the maintenance worker's face when he scrubbed it away. The wall was cold, too cold, like something had been alive underneath it. 2 days later, a technician reported hearing whispers coming from the collar during recharging. They thought it was interference from nearby equipment, so they isolated the sound and amplified it. It wasn't static, it was words. I dream of open doors. Since then, the cameras in his block randomly distort, like the signals being rerouted through an invisible network. Every tech who tries to trace it says the same thing. It's coming from inside his body. He's broadcasting, not to us, to someone or something else. Last night I walked past his cell again. He wasn't in the corner. He was standing directly in front of the glass. For the first time, I saw his reflection. Mine merged with his just for a moment, like the glass wasn't dividing us, but connecting us. And in that split second, I heard his voice inside my head. Not spoken, thought. "Do you understand yet? You made me." I stepped back, heart racing, but he didn't move. He just smiled. They say the phaser is a gateway to other dimensions, but Prisoner X, he's proof that hell doesn't need another world. We can build it ourselves, and we already have. There's a saying that circulates among the guards here. if something breaks, pray it stays broken. Because in this place, when things start working again, it usually means he's been at it again. They call him the Tinkerer, a harmless name, right? Sounds almost friendly, like a man in a workshop fixing toys. But nothing about this man is harmless. When I first saw him, he looked ordinary. Small, thin, almost frail. He sat cross-legged in his cell, surrounded by piles of scrap wires, circuits, pieces of old cameras, disassembled keypads. The official rulebook says no prisoner should have access to anything electronic. But somehow, he always does. No one knows how he gets them. Sometimes, an entire section will go dark for an hour. And when the lights come back, there's a broken tablet or a dismantled drone lying at his feet. He smiles like a child who's just solved a puzzle. He calls himself a technomancer. The first time I heard him say that, I laughed. He laughed too, right before every monitor in the hallway flickered to static. For 15 seconds, the entire floor went offline. When the cameras came back, every screen displayed one word, hello. That was the day I stopped laughing. You learn quickly here that every prisoner has a routine. With the phaser, it's the blinking. With prisoner X, it's the silence before something dies. And with the Tinkerer, it's curiosity. He doesn't want to hurt anyone, not directly. He just wants to see what happens. Give him an object, any object, and he'll find a way to make it do something it shouldn't. Guards' radios disappear from their belts, only to start broadcasting whispers. Security cameras flicker and show rooms that don't exist. One time the elevator panel lit up for a floor that wasn't on any blueprint. He finds patterns where there shouldn't be any signals in noise code in static. He once told me, machines talk to me when you stop listening. Then he winked and said, they're very lonely, you know. At first we fought him on it. Every time he built something, we'd storm his cell, confiscate it and destroy it. He'd giggle like it was all a game. Then one day, someone had an idea. What if we let him tinker? We started giving him broken equipment, laptops with no CPUs, old radios, stripped of transmitters, disabled cameras. We thought if we kept him busy, he'd stop breaking everything else. It worked. For a while. He'd spend days hunched over his toys, humming muttering numbers under his breath. He'd hand them back proudly, and we'd thank him pretending we cared what he fixed. Then we'd quietly dismantle everything and toss it into the incinerator. Until one day, someone didn't. There was a rookie guard named Peters. Good guy. Too good for this job. He thought the Tinkerer was just a sad, broken old man who needed purpose. When his phone stopped working, he figured, why not let the old guy have a look? He broke every rule in the book that day. He gave the Tinkerer his phone. Now you have to understand, the facility is sealed tighter than anything on Earth. No outside signals, no Wi-Fi, no cell reception. It's a tomb buried under the world. So when the Tinkerer took that phone, nobody thought anything could happen. But a few hours later, every siren in the building started screaming. The lights turned red. A voice echoed through every intercom. Nuclear launch detected. Panic doesn't describe it. The entire facility went into lockdown. Doors sealed. Alarms blared. Commanders screamed orders through radios that no longer worked. We all thought it was an exercise. Until the emergency feed started broadcasting news footage. Real footage of a nuclear alert in Hawaii. The message, this is not a drill. And in the middle of all that chaos, the Tinkerer sat in his cell, laughing so hard he could barely breathe. When we finally reached him, He just pointed at the phone and said, I wanted to see if I could talk to the sky. We tackled him, confiscated everything, and dragged Peters out in handcuffs. The whole thing was written off as a false alarm. They said a system glitch caused the warning, but every technician who looked at that phone swore it was impossible. The connection had come from inside our network, from somewhere that doesn't exist. For 3 months after that, the tinkerer wasn't allowed to touch anything. No scraps, no wires, not even a spoon. They said he didn't mind, that he just sat quietly in his cell, humming to himself. But every time I walked past, I could hear faint clicks, metallic, rhythmic, deliberate. He was building something again. With what I don't know, he didn't have tools or parts or power, but the sound was there. When we finally went in to check, there was nothing. Just a message scratched into the wall, written backward, like it was meant to be read in a reflection. I can still hear the sky. I've tried not to think about what that means. But lately, the radios have started crackling again. Sometimes, I hear a faint voice through the static. His voice murmuring fragments of sentences like he's whispering through the circuits themselves. Don't worry, I fixed it. The tech team says it's interference, that there's no way he could access the comms system. But I've learned something in this job. When the machines start talking, it's never just static. And when you start to understand what they're saying, that's when they stop talking to you. They start talking through you. A few nights ago, I woke up to the sound of my earpiece clicking on by itself. Just one word came through before the battery died. Hello. The same word that appeared on every screen the day he first smiled at me. There's one prisoner they call the statue that breathes, because even though he never moves, you can see his chest rise and fall over and over, like he's trapped between life and death. He's been here longer than anyone. Longer than the guards, longer than the warden, longer than the building itself, if the records are to be believed. They found him before the prison was even built. He's known only as Subject 041, the Chrononaut. But everyone here calls him the man who broke time. He sits frozen in his cell, mid-motion, like someone paused the world around him. His hand is outstretched, face twisted in terror, eyes wide and unblinking. No movement, no sound. But the scanners show his heart still beating, slowly, once every 47 seconds. That's not a metaphor. His body is alive, just stuck. The scientist who first examined him said his entire molecular structure is in temporal suspension. He's caught between two moments that no longer exist, and nobody knows how to unstick him without tearing him apart, or worse, tearing us apart with him. They discovered him years ago, deep beneath a residential building slated for demolition. There had been reports of strange signals interfering with local power grids. When a retrieval team went in, they found a basement filled with makeshift machines, tangled wires, glowing coils, generators humming like they were breathing. And in the center of it all was him, frozen in that same position, one arm out, reaching for a lever that no longer existed. The machines around him were scorched, melted, twisted in on themselves like they'd been pulled through a black hole. The investigation team didn't even realize what they were looking at until one of them leaned too close. She said the air around him felt thick, like walking through syrup. Then she touched him. For exactly 0.8 seconds, she disappeared. Her body came back, fused to the wall, burned from the inside out, eyes wide open, mouth frozen in a silent scream. That's when they realized whatever this man had built, whatever he'd done, had broken something fundamental. I didn't believe most of that when I first heard it, until I saw the logs myself. They recovered data from his computers, journal entries, voice memos, calculations. All of them point to one conclusion: he'd successfully built a time machine. Crude, unstable, but functional. And the last entry he wrote before it all went wrong was a single line: "If I kill him, I end the paradox." The files attached detailed the plan. He wasn't going back to stop a war or fix a mistake. He was going back to kill his grandfather. The grandfather paradox. That's what the scientists call it. The oldest thought experiment in temporal mechanics. If you kill your grandfather before your parent is born, you'd never exist. And if you never exist, how could you go back and do it? A paradox with no solution. But he found one. He succeeded. At least, that's what the logs suggest. His grandfather died in 1947, found dead in his study. No known relatives, no descendants. So by every logical measure, the man in that cell should never have existed. And yet, there he is, frozen in time heart, still beating, trapped between the moment he erased himself and the moment the universe realized it. The scientists have no explanation. The rest of us just call it what it is: punishment. When I got assigned to observe him, I thought it would be easy. He doesn't move, doesn't speak, doesn't try to kill you, just a statue with a pulse. But the longer I watched him, the more I started noticing things that didn't make sense. Sometimes when you look at him through the security glass, he seems closer. Not physically, just off by a fraction. Like reality can't quite decide where to place him. And there's this sound, a faint ticking, like a clock, but irregular. You can only hear it when the lights flicker. Tick, 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 stop. Then silence. Then the sound of something reversing. It's like the world around him is breathing backward. Last month, they tried to run a test on him again. Hooked up sensors, ran radiation scans, tried to measure the anomalies field. Halfway through, the entire wing lost power for 3 minutes. When it came back, everything looked the same except for one thing. Every clock in the facility was running in reverse. Every recording device was playing backwards audio. And every guard on that level swore they saw movement, just a flicker, like he twitched his finger. They shut the test down immediately. The lead scientist never returned to work. Her final note in the log read, "He's not stuck in time. He's holding it still." Now every week, they send me to check his vitals. It's always the same steady heartbeat, zero movement, same frozen pose. But lately, I've started hearing whispers when I'm near his cell. It's faint, like an old radio signal. At first, I thought it was interference. Then one night, I listened closer. It wasn't random noise. It was words. "You shouldn't have looked for me." I dropped the headset. The sound stopped instantly. When I picked it up again, all I heard was the faint ticking. But the rhythm was different now. Faster. The next morning, I checked the security footage. There, frame by frame, his eyes were closed. Just for 1 second. Then open again. No one believes me. They say it's a glitch. That the timestamp data was corrupted during power loss. But I can't shake the feeling that he's aware. That somewhere inside that frozen body, trapped in the folds of time itself, he's still thinking, still watching, still waiting. For what I don't know. Maybe for the rest of us to catch up. Or maybe for time to run out entirely. I asked one of the senior researchers once, Why keep him alive? What's the point? She looked at me tired and hollow and said, because he might be the only proof we have that time can die. That night, I had a dream. I was standing outside his cell and the glass was gone. He turned his head toward me and his mouth finally opened. What came out wasn't a voice. It was the sound of every clock on earth breaking at once. I woke up screaming. But the worst part, when I looked at the clock beside my bed, the hands weren't moving forward anymore. They were spinning backward. There's one prisoner who doesn't belong here. At least that's what I used to tell myself. No chains, no reinforced cell, no armed guards outside her door. Instead, she lives in a house, on a quiet suburban street, in a town that doesn't exist. We call it Small Haven. It's an entire level of the facility designed to look like an average American town. Blue skies painted on the ceiling, artificial sunlight that follows a programmed day and night cycle. Shops, schools, parks, all of it, staffed by actors. It's convincing enough that if you woke up there, you'd swear you were still in the real world. But it's not real. It's containment. And at the center of it, all is her. Subject 073 Emily, a 12-year-old girl with brown hair, bright eyes, and the power to erase everything you've ever known. I didn't know any of this when they gave me the assignment. They told me I'd be going undercover, posing as a transfer student in her class. A routine behavioral observation, they said. It felt almost normal. After weeks of staring at monsters and anomalies, the idea of blending into a fake town sounded like a vacation. When I arrived, I played my part, backpack, uniform, awkward smile. The other kids greeted me like I was really one of them. And Emily? She was just like any other kid. Shy at first, polite. She laughed when the teacher called on me, and I didn't know the answer. She was real. Too real. My cover story was simple. A new student who'd moved in with his single mother to start fresh. They even gave me an actress to play my mom. We practiced our lines for hours, how we met, where we used to live, why we came here. Every lie rehearsed to perfection. And it worked. Emily's family invited us to dinner that first week. Her parents, also actors, played their roles flawlessly. They talked about school hobbies, the weather. It was a perfect, warm suburban moment. Except I couldn't shake the feeling that we were sitting on the edge of a minefield. The meal went fine until her mother took my mom into the kitchen for wine. That left Emily and me alone at the table. She looked at me for a long time. Then she said softly, "You're not from here, are you?" My stomach dropped. I smiled like an idiot and tried to keep up the act. Yeah, just moved here." She tilted her head. "No, I mean, you're not real." I froze. "What do you mean?" She leaned closer and whispered, "This town, the school, my parents, it's all fake." I know. Her voice didn't shake. She wasn't scared. She was resigned. And when she looked at me, her eyes shimmered like tiny suns burning just beneath the surface. I didn't know what to do. Protocol says to de-escalate, avoid emotional stress at all costs. Because when she gets upset, bad things happen. They told me her power is like nuclear fusion trapped in human form. If she loses control, there's no stopping it. The last time it happened, they say an entire testing facility in Nevada simply disappeared. No crater, no debris, just gone. And now she was staring at me, waiting for an answer. I forced a smile. "That's a weird thing to say, Emily. Why do you think that?" She shrugged. "I can feel it. Everyone here thinks too loud. That stopped me cold. Things too loud? I asked. She nodded. At first it was just noise, but then I realized it was people, their thoughts, their lies. My throat went dry. She could hear mine's. She smiled softly, like she was confessing a secret. My parents aren't really my parents, but they love me anyway. I can feel it, even when they pretend. Her voice trembled just slightly. I don't mind pretending. It makes them happy. It makes me safe. For a long moment, I didn't speak. Neither did she. The silence between us felt alive, humming with a tension I couldn't name. Then she said, "Do you know what happens when I get angry?" I didn't answer, because I already knew. She looked out the window. The sun in the painted sky dimmed a little. I don't like what it does. It hurts everyone. So I try not to think about it. But sometimes, it thinks for me. She looked back at me, her expression soft but terrifyingly calm. I think that's why they built this place, so I'd never have to remember. That night I filed my report as usual. No mention of telepathy, no mention of awareness. Just subject remains stable. Social interaction positive. If they found out she knew the truth, they'd sedate her. Maybe even wipe her memory again. And something inside me couldn't let that happen. Maybe it was pity, or maybe it was fear. Because for the first time I realized she wasn't a monster. She was a child trapped in a lie she didn't ask for. And the only thing standing between her and the end of the world was the illusion of a perfect little town. Weeks passed. I kept visiting. We'd talk about school, about books, about the stars. She liked stars. She said they made her feel less alone. Once she asked me, "Do you think the stars can see us?" I said, "I think they're watching over us." She smiled sadly. "I think they're watching for me." Last month, she stopped coming to school for a few days. They said she was sick. When she came back, I noticed cracks along the skybox, tiny fractures in the painted ceiling, spreading like veins. When I asked one of the tech engineers about it, he just said, "She's dreaming again." That night, I dreamed too. I was back in her classroom. Everyone was frozen except her. She stood by the window, staring at the false sunlight, whispering, "They can't keep me here forever." When she turned to face me, her eyes were glowing white. I woke up shaking. The next day when I saw her again, she looked perfectly normal. No mention of the cracks. No memory of the dream. She just smiled and said, "Hi." And yet, the air around her felt wrong, heavier, like the pressure before a storm. When I left that day, I noticed the actors in the town were different. New faces. No one told me why, but I think I know. Sometimes I wonder what would happen if she ever stopped pretending. If one day she woke up and decided she didn't want to live inside the lie anymore. Would she cry? Would she scream? Or would she simply breathe? And the entire world stop existing? There's a phrase carved into the back of the door in the observation wing. No one admits to writing it, but everyone's seen it. Keep her happy, or none of this matters. Every time I look at it, I hear her voice in my head, soft, gentle, but echoing with something vast behind it. Don't worry, I love you all. That's why I won't wake up, and that's when I realize maybe she already ended the world, and we're just living inside the dream she built to replace it. They told me this one was harmless. That's what they always say, right before the nightmares start. I'd just finished a rotation in Small Haven when they reassigned me to Sub-Level 13 Deep Containment. The air there felt heavier, thicker, as if the walls themselves were trying to press you out of existence. It's the level reserved for prisoners who can't be moved. Not because they're dangerous, but because no one knows where they are. That's where I first heard of him. The man in the hall. His file was almost empty. No name, no origin. Just a note scribbled at the bottom of the report. Keep the food warm. Don't look into the holes. I thought it was a joke. Some old guard hazing the new guy. Until I saw his cell. There's nothing special about it. No bars, no reinforced walls, just smooth concrete and a single steel door. But the moment you open that door, you feel wrong. The air hums, the lights dim, and your vision bends at the edges like you're standing inside a mirage. And then you see them. The holes, they're not real holes, not like you'd expect. They don't go through the wall, they go into it, perfectly round, dark as ink, about the size of a man's chest. Sometimes there's one, sometimes two, sometimes 20. They appear and disappear at random on the floor, the ceiling, the corners of the room. Every time a new one forms, the old one vanishes. No rubble, no cracks, no trace it was ever there. Just smooth, untouched concrete and silence. The first time I brought his meal, there were 3 holes, 2 on the left wall, 1 above the door. I set the tray down carefully and stepped back. Protocol says we never enter the cell, not fully. We slide the tray through the gap and wait. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then I heard movement. It wasn't footsteps. It was like something crawling inside the walls, skittering, shifting, whispering. A hand emerged from the nearest hole, not reaching out, just resting there. Human, pale, shaking slightly. Then a voice drifted out low and calm. "Thank you." I froze. The air around me rippled like heat, rising from asphalt. And then, just as suddenly, the hand retracted, and the hole vanished. When I told the warden what I saw, he didn't even blink. He just said, "Good. That means he's still here. Still here." The words didn't sit right, because I realized then no one had actually seen him. Not fully. Every guard who delivers food says the same thing. He talks. He eats. But no one's ever caught more than a glimpse. Just movement behind the darkness, a shifting shadow, a flicker of something that doesn't quite fit. Some guards joke that he's part of the wall. Others whisper that he's not a man at all, just the echo of one. One night during my 4th week, the alarm for his cell went off. Containment breach. We thought he'd escaped. When I got there, the room was empty. No tray, no holes, no sound. The sensors picked up nothing. But as I turned to leave, I heard it. A soft giggle from behind me. I spun around, nothing. Just the door and a small fresh hole right beside the handle. I leaned closer. Inside, I could hear whispering, voices overlapping, hundreds of them layered and echoing in ways that didn't make sense. It was like listening to 1,000 people talk through a tunnel that had no end. Then through the noise, one voice rose above. The rest calm, steady, familiar. "Don't worry, I never left." The next day when the cleanup crew came, the hole was gone again. We checked every camera, every log, every heat signature. All blank, except for one frame. Half a second of corrupted footage, showing a silhouette in the center of the room. It looked human, but it had too many arms. They keep telling us that the holes are harmless, that they're just distortions, spatial anomalies, nothing more. But I've seen what happens when someone gets too close. A rookie guard named Flores thought he saw movement inside one of them. He leaned in with a flashlight. The beam didn't reach the other side. It just bent and disappeared, swallowed whole. He whispered something I couldn't hear. Then he leaned closer, too close. There was a flash of movement. And then, nothing. His body didn't fall. It didn't make a sound. It just wasn't there anymore. We sealed the room for 3 days. When we reopened it, the hole was gone and his badge was lying neatly on the floor. The camera feed during the incident static for exactly 4 minutes and 19 seconds. When the footage resumed, a voice could be heard faintly through the microphone. He's here now. He likes the quiet. No one volunteers for his block anymore. Assignments are rotated randomly, so no one spends too long near him. Some say it's for safety. Others say it's because the longer you work around him, the more you start hearing things. I didn't believe that. Until last night, I was lying in my bunk, half asleep, when I heard its soft, gentle tapping against the wall. 3 taps, pause, 3 more. It came from behind my head, the same rhythm as the whole alarms. I sat up, heart pounding, and pressed my ear to the wall. It sounded like someone breathing on the other side. Then a whisper, clear and close. You opened the door too wide. I froze. Because that's what Flores said, right before he disappeared. The next morning, I went to report it. But when I passed his cell, I saw something new. The entire floor was covered in small, perfect circles. Hundreds of them. Each one shallow, smooth, dark. Like he'd been trying to dig his way out. Or maybe dig something in. We don't know what he is. We don't even know if he is. But one of the scientists once said something that stuck with me. Every hole wants to be filled. Every void wants to be whole again. Maybe he's not a man at all. Maybe he's the echo of whatever this building was before it became a prison. And maybe those holes aren't leading somewhere else. Maybe they're leading back to whatever made this place. When I left his block tonight, I swore I saw a new hole forming at the end of the corridor. It was small, harmless looking, but as I passed it, I could hear my own voice whispering from the dark. Thank you. You ever hear laughter echo down a hallway when no one else is there? That low human sound that shouldn't be where it is. That's how I met Frank. They call him a prisoner, but that's not true. You can't imprison a hurricane. You can't handcuff fire. And you sure as hell can't lock up whatever Frank is. He came here on his own. Walked right up to the front gate of a facility that doesn't exist and knocked 3 times calm as can be. The security cameras caught him smiling at the lens before it shorted out. When the guards opened the door, he just said, "Hi, I'm bored. You people look fun." Then he stepped inside, and the locks sealed behind him like they'd been waiting. The reports call him Subject 099, Frank, but that name doesn't fit. He's not a man, not a god, not an alien. He's everything pretending to be something small. He doesn't have a cell. He doesn't need one. Walls don't mean anything to him. When they tried to confine him the first time, he stood there for about 2 seconds before the entire structure folded in on itself like origami, then unfolded again perfectly fine. Except the room was upside down, and so were the guards. He laughed for hours. After that, they stopped trying to contain him. Instead, they gave him a uniform, a fake badge, and called him a special operations officer. Now he wanders the halls like he belongs here, whistling, tapping on glass, asking the other prisoners if they're having fun yet. Most of them don't answer. some can't. One did, and the walls of that cell still hum at night. I've spoken to him twice. Both times were by accident. The first was in the cafeteria. He was sitting alone eating something that looked like soup but smelled like ozone. When I passed by, he gestured to the empty seat across from him. "Sit down," he said. His voice was friendly, too friendly. I didn't want to, but I did. "Because you don't tell Frank no." He smiled at me, all teeth and warmth. "Do you ever get tired of pretending you're real?" I blinked. "What?" He stirred his soup, the liquid shifting colors, blue to red to gold. "Never mind," he said. "You'll understand when the walls start breathing." Then he winked, stood up, and walked straight through the table. Not around it. Through it. Like it wasn't even there. The second time was worse. It was after an incident with one of the lower containment wings. A breach, they said, multiple deaths. Frank volunteered to help. He strolled into the chaos. No weapon, no armor, just humming an old tune. Cameras caught what happened next, but the footage was destroyed. All I know is this: everyone who died came back, but not as themselves. Their faces were smooth, blank, their mouths stitched into smiles. When Frank came back up the elevator, he was whistling again. He stopped when he saw me watching from the observation deck. Then he smiled and said, "Don't worry. They're happier now. I've read the old reports. Theories, speculations, desperate attempts to make sense of him. Some say he's extraterrestrial. Others think he's a failed experiment from some forgotten project. But my favorite theory is the quietest one, buried in a handwritten note from a scientist who vanished years ago. Frank isn't from another dimension. He is the dimension. Ours. That one keeps me up at night. The staff treat him like a spoiled child. They give him assignments, hand him fake reports, and praise him like he's doing important work. It keeps him calm, keeps him entertained. Every month, they throw him a fake ceremony, Employee of the Month. He gets a piece of paper with his name on it, a handshake, and a plastic trophy. He loves it. Carries the trophy everywhere. One time he told me, I could make a real sun. Put it in my pocket. Watch it rise whenever I want. I didn't say anything. He grinned. But then you wouldn't need the fake one on the ceiling, would you? The ceiling lights flickered, and for half a second, I swear I saw daylight above us. Sometimes he talks about things that haven't happened yet, like he's remembering the future. Last week, he stopped me in the hallway and said, "Hey, when the walls start screaming, don't run toward the light. That's not an exit." I laughed nervously and walked away. The next day, the power grid shorted, and I heard it. The walls, screaming. Frank isn't cruel. That's the worst part. He doesn't mean harm. He just doesn't understand why we think pain matters. He'll twist reality into knots just to see what shape it takes. He once turned the guard's head into a rose. No blood, no scream. Just a perfect red flower blooming from a human neck. When they asked him why, he said he looked better that way. Then he frowned like he actually felt sorry about it. He plucked the petals one by one and whispered, "Oops, too fragile." And the god's body vanished, like he'd never existed. Sometimes I wonder why he stays. He could leave anytime he wants. He knows that. We all do. Once I asked him, "Why are you here?" He smiled, leaned close, and said, "Because this is the only place that still surprises me." Then he paused. His expression changed. He looked almost sad. But not for much longer. Ever since then, the facility's been different. The lights don't hum the same way. The air feels thinner, And in the break room, the calendar's been stuck on the same date for weeks. We keep pretending everything's normal, that the world outside still exists. But sometimes when I walk past the observation glass, I catch glimpses of the sky. Not the painted one from Small Haven, the real one. Only it isn't blue anymore. It's gold, shifting, liquid, like someone melted the sun and poured it over the horizon. This morning, Frank was standing by the elevator again. He had his plastic trophy in one hand and a smile on his face. "Big day today," he said. "What do you mean?" I asked. He pointed upward. "Promotion." Then he laughed loud and bright, and for the first time, the sound echoed everywhere. Every hallway, every cell, every vent and pipe and wall. It was as if the whole building was laughing with him. And underneath that laughter, I heard something else, the low, heavy sound of breathing. Not Frank's, the building's. Maybe that's why he's been so calm lately. Maybe he's waiting for it to wake up. Because whatever's sleeping under our feet, he's the only one who knows its name. You ever wake up and feel the floor breathing? That slow, steady rise under your feet, like the ground itself is alive. That's when I realized this prison wasn't built. It was born. We've always called it the vault. But that name's a lie. This place isn't a vault. It's a body. The higher-ups pretend not to notice. They keep us focused on the inmates, the blinking man, the weapon, the girl who could end the world. They say containment first. They say we're the ones keeping the monsters inside. But what if the real monster is beneath us? It started small. Concrete crumbling in the lower levels, doors jamming, sensors misfiring. The maintenance crews blamed humidity. The scientists blamed stress fractures. But then, we started hearing things. Late at night, when the vents shut down, you can hear it, a faint rhythm echoing through the pipes. At first, we thought it was water pressure, until it synced with our heartbeats. One morning, the lights flickered in the mess hall, just once. Then every metal surface started to vibrate, a deep hum rising from the floor. Cups rattled, trays fell. When it stopped, the room was quiet, too quiet, and all the clocks had reset to 0. Frank just smiled and said, "It's stretching." I went down to sub-level 15 that night, where the cracks were worst. The walls there aren't concrete anymore, they've changed color. Pale gray, smooth, almost organic. If you touch them, they're warm. Some say it's the heat from the generators. Others say the walls are growing. I didn't believe that until I saw it happen. A section of the corridor rippled slowly, like skin under a pulse. Then it solidified again, sealing the crack completely. That's when I understood. The building doesn't need maintenance. It's healing. There's a room on every floor no one talks about. No label, no record, no access code. Just a steel door with a single marking burned into it, O1. When I asked the warden what it was, he said, "You don't want to know." I should have listened. 3 nights ago, Frank disappeared. Every camera glitched out at the same moment. When he came back, he was humming again, same tune as always, but he looked tired. He handed me his fake Employee of the Month trophy and said, "You can have this. I won't need it where I'm going." Then he winked. "Say hi to the first prisoner for me." That's when I decided to find that door. It was on the lowest floor, far below any authorized section. The walls down there were almost black, the air thick, like it hadn't been breathed in centuries. When I reached the door marked Door 1, the metal was warm. Not like from heat, like it had a pulse. I swiped my card. The reader blinked red, then green. The door opened by itself. Inside was nothing. Just an empty chamber, massive and dark. The air shimmered, and the ground sloped downward like the inside of a hollow sphere. In the center, a faint red glow pulsed. Not light, something deeper. Alive. And then I heard the voice. Not through the air, but through everything. Through the walls, through my bones, through the blood in my veins. You'd think you built me, but I built you. I fell to my knees. My head felt like it was going to split open. I could feel it thinking. Images filled my mind, prisons, laboratories, cities rising and falling, rebuilding themselves over and over through time. The same blueprints, the same foundations, always ending the same way. It wasn't just this facility. It had happened before, over and over. We didn't create the vault to contain monsters. The vault creates monsters to contain itself. Every anomaly, every prisoner, each one, is a byproduct of the building trying to understand what it is. And every time it learns too much, it resets. The ground shook beneath me. The walls rippled like waves. From the red glow in the center, I saw shapes' faces, hundreds of them, pressed against the surface like trapped souls. Some I recognized. Guards, prisoners, people who'd gone missing. They were part of it now. The voice whispered again, "You called me a prison, but I am the warden. I ran, or tried to." The corridors stretched endlessly, looping back on themselves, the lights flickering in perfect rhythm with my pulse. Every door I passed led to another hallway. Every hallway led back to Oyo 1. The last thing I remember before blacking out was Frank's laughter echoing from everywhere at once. Told you it was stretching. I woke up in the infirmary 2 days later. No one mentioned the lower levels. The warden told me I'd had a psychotic break, that I'd wandered into a restricted maintenance area and collapsed from oxygen loss. But when I looked at the monitor beside my bed, the screen was blank except for one line of text. "Welcome back, officer. Containment protocols restored." That was 3 days ago. Everything looks normal again. The prisoners are quiet. The halls are calm. But sometimes, when the lights flicker, I can hear the walls breathing. Slow, steady, patient. Like they're waiting. And last night, when I passed the elevator, I saw something scratched into the steel door. Just 3 words. It woke up. Maybe it was always awake. Maybe we're the ones dreaming. Because if the prison is alive, and it's the one holding us here, then what does that make us? I've told you everything I can remember about the blinking man who traveled through hell, the weapon that learned to think, the tinkerer who spoke to machines, the man who broke time, the girl who could end the world, the endless halls, and Frank the god who got bored. But none of them were the real threat. They were just symptoms, echoes of something much older, deeper, and infinitely patient. The first prisoner was never a person. It was the building itself, alive, waiting, dreaming. And if I'm right, we're not keeping it contained anymore, we're inside it. The cameras still flicker sometimes. The walls still breathe. And when I close my eyes, I can hear it whispering through the vents. Soft, calm, almost kind. You think you built me, but I built you, so if the lights start to dim where you are, if you feel the ground shift, or the air grow warm, or the hum beneath your feet, rise, don't run. It's already everywhere. The vault is awake, and it remembers you now.